Thank you all so much for being here with me. This is our opportunity to really just dig into what it means to lead, to have responsibility in nonprofits. And I am so honored to, first of all, be a part of the CSM family, and then to also lead a nonprofit. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. I really do believe that we have been challenged for a reason today, as we constantly are related to nonprofits. So there's probably not much new about what you felt from this morning related to the all of the things that you might deal with under the umbrella of a nonprofit. So we're going to talk about it today, and it's going to be very interactive. So I'm looking forward to you all sharing in the chat, as well as aloud and unmuting yourselves. Let's see here. All right. So just a little bit about me. I will not read all of this to you, but my name is Trenace Richardson, and I have a whole lot of those type of resume things that you can see here. For the sake of this conversation, I am the founder of Real Women. We like to say Real Women Rock, because we do. And we are a safe space that creates these avenues of sister circles for women to do personal development work on themselves. And we have established, of course, pre-COVID in person, but we've established sister circles all throughout the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. And then we have taken sister circles on the road across the country and abroad, as far as Okinawa, Japan. It is our goal to make sure that every woman has access to a circle of sisters, no matter where they live in the world. And we believe that that's important. Right, Michelle, talk about resilience. And I happen to be the director of the Organizational Development and Learning Institute at the College of Southern Maryland. So I'm honored to be here in a couple of different ways. And I'll let you all let me know in the chat or unmute if there's anything you don't see clearly. And this is a personal slide about me. And I put this here to put myself out there as soon as possible, so that you would know. And I think we might need to mute a couple of folks, because we're going to have a chance to really share aloud in just a moment. But the real me, as it relates to these things, I think it's important to put these things out there really right off the bat, honestly, because authentically me is a safe space, and I want to create that for us, because we're really not in this session going to talk about the business of things, the finances of nonprofits. We're going to talk about you as the leader, and me as the leader. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm the product of a blended family, as well as the parent in a blended family. I'm the product of a divorced family. I was physically abused by my father. I'm a molestation survivor, nature-loving outdoors enthusiast, and I love frogs. And I just don't mean the statuettes. I think real frogs are cute. So yeah, that's me. So I share that in the hopes that you automatically feel comfortable, that you can either relate to something that I've shared on this slide, or you'll know that you can share openly about where you are. Our agenda is really short and sweet, because I want to leave a whole lot of room. I think so too, Sherry. I want to leave a whole lot of room for discussion. We're really going to evaluate personally where we are right now. We're going to explore possibilities, and we're going to establish new strategies. Hopefully by the end of this, you will have picked up at least one thing that you're going to do differently or practice differently that might help you personally as a leader. And thank you for all of the chat. Please keep them coming. This is going to be a really good session. And it's going to take all of us to really engage to make it happen. So keep the comments coming. And yes, I personally believe there's a prince under every frog layer. So thank you for that. All right, so there's a poll, and I am on my slides, but I'm going, and I think you'll still be able to see my slides. If I go over to the Wova app for myself, I'll be able to see the results of the slides. So on the our class page, our session page, you were to find a poll, and I might be able to show it. Let's see how good I am. You were asked to really just rate where you currently are, right? Yes, I've got answers on my slides. So I'm going to put this up. I'm going to share this just so that we can all see it together and not individually. You'll have to forgive. I've been looking at the same thing you all have, trying to get in. But over here on the side, I've asked you all, and it's awesome. We've gotten 23 answers so far. Basically, the question is, how are you doing as it relates to the work of the nonprofit? As a leader, how are you holding up? How are you doing? And the options are easy peasy. Got a great handle on it. A labor of love, hard, but so rewarding. And then overwhelmed, I am drowning in it. And yes, continue to add to the poll. You can see it growing and moving, but so many of us feel it's hard work, but it's very rewarding work. I don't want to overlook this last one, because at least a quarter of us right now feel overwhelmed and we're drowning in it. And I'll be honest with you, a labor of love, when we say hard, we mean hard. It may be rewarding, but just as rewarding as it is hard, right? So being in those two categories, I love that there are at least 3 people who say easy peasy, got a great handle on it. And we're hoping that you will be a definite 3 that share some of your strategies with us as we share with each other during this session. But all of us have lessons to learn from each other. And so as that poll continues to grow, I'm going to share my PowerPoint back now, but I'd love for you to continue sharing there, because that's something we can come back to and continue talking about. And I really want us to talk through it, not just the ratings in the poll, but I'd love for us to talk about it. So this is when the floor is open for just a few moments. This is when the chat is wide open. I would love to hear from you as a leader, as a practitioner in nonprofits. What are some of your challenges? Please, who wants to go first?
I'll say a little something. Hi, I'm Monica Grove. I work with adult ed here. This is my first conference coming to. I wanted to check it out. I've worked with with no intention, just leading with my heart, nonprofits for ever since I got out of college. So, but I've also been heavily involved in my church. So I'm in 2 parts here. So I think the biggest challenge has been communicating in this environment, being able to communicate what you need to communicate it effectively so someone receives the message you intend for it to go out, and also making sure everybody's on the same page with what's going forward. So there's just double the amount of communication.
Yeah. Communication is so key. And I love that you have a couple of hats on, because many of us are community and civic leaders, church leaders, practitioners. We're operating in a lot of different ways to serve our communities, our churches, and communication is such a big challenge, because we can never over communicate too much. And then even when communication is out there, it could easily be misconstrued. So thank you for that. Anyone else? And I'll read the chat in just a moment as well. But does anyone want to unmute and share?
I'll do a little.
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's, I put in the chat growth. Apologize for my voice. I think I talk for a living. Excuse me.
You do, Sandy.
And I think it's growth. I mean, almost 26 years, and at each level of growing, it is challenging. excuse me, challenging, first of all, to recognize growth, and to be able to let go of one thing, to be able to go to the next and know when to let go, and how to grow, because it's that's the big thing, learning how to grow and when to let go.
Yeah, that is so good. And I'm so glad you said even how to grow, because the growth issue is a challenge at every level. How do I, as a startup, as a newbie, how do I get this baby to grow? How do I feed it and nurture it? And then once we're growing, what do we do in this stage differently? How do we move into the next phase? So important. Every stage of the journey of a nonprofit is about growth. Thank you for that. Anyone else want to share verbally before we go to the chat? What are your challenges? Yes, Michelle.
All right. I'm Michelle. I'm part of a nonprofit for health insurance enrollment. Also a pastor's wife, so I know how the challenge has been for the church as well. And they kind of overlap, that getting together and having people trust you in person is easier. So a trust component, whether like over the phone or over Zoom, is a little bit less authentic to some people, and you really have to go longer to get them to trust you.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge, the big elephant in everyone's room is, now that COVID has complicated things, not only are we being resilient with technology and working through issues and challenges, but you're right, the people that we serve, Sandy just spoke, who has been working for so diligently in Southern Maryland with lifestyles. I know the world flipped upside down when it just became, when COVID hit. And so for many of us, no matter what stage we're in, the idea of not being able to be as in person, oh my goodness, that trust factor is so important when you're serving others. And to have to translate, sincerity and help and support virtually for some, and then to really have to cover up and be safe and protective. That trust issue is so important, and it is a challenge doing it virtually when we have to do that. Thank you for that. Yeah, and I'll bring up mine in a second. I think the other Michelle unmuted. Hello there.
Hey, how are you?
All right, thanks for being here.
Thank you. So I work for a nonprofit, and then I'm also trying to start my own nonprofit. And so on both fronts, I think I can agree with everyone. So with the one that I work for, there's always a challenge anyway with just getting, like you said, getting the word out, explaining who you are. And the nonprofit that I work for has been around for 21, 22 years. And no matter how much we recruit or market, I still get the response of, I didn't even know you guys were there. How long you been around? we can be on the side of a bus. We can be inside the metro station. We can be on the radio, and somebody will say, I've never heard of you. And so, and then there is the thought that whatever it is that you're doing is taking away from someone else. And just trying to get the truth out that, no, we're all just kind of working together for the same common goal, just a different way. And then the standpoint of just being someone who wants to start one, knowing where to begin and how to begin. And now that things are different, whatever ideas you have, you may have to put the brakes on, and because of COVID, you may not be able to do those same things. So now the thought is, how do you revamp, refocus, and reconfigure what it is that you plan to do?
Yeah, so you mentioned so many nuggets, and I really appreciate that, especially and I think even after starting late, we've gotten a really good discussion in as it relates to how we are dealing with all of these challenges. I'm looking at all of these and thinking, wow, coming to an organization where volunteers are more mature age. Michelle just mentioned different stages, trying to learn where we are different, developing relationships that need to grow, building trust and relationships, recruiting volunteers, marketing and communicating with others. Y'all see all of these, right? There are a million things that can be overwhelming and challenging. And so it's natural that we would feel that it's hard, that it's challenging, trying to balance all of the duties, grant writing, volunteer management, scheduling, reporting. I tried to mention as many of these as possible, right? But with that being said, because I want to make sure I honor our time, this is really important for us to look at. I mentioned some, you've mentioned some. None of us have mentioned the personal weight, the personal care, because at the end of the day, the work that we do does not get done if we are not healthy, if we are not well enough to do it. And so even here, I mentioned all of the things I knew you all would mention, growth, and I don't know, I may have missed someone doing board participation and marketing and all of those things. And so I really want to talk about, as it relates to who you are, I really want to get to you as a leader and what that means as a leader, because as a leader, you are leading because you're in a nonprofit. I'm not even going to qualify it. I know without a shadow of a doubt that because you have dedicated some part of your life, for some of you, all of your life, to a nonprofit work or committing yourself to starting a nonprofit work, you are a leader with soul. For me, you are the kind of leader who influences others while being exactly who you are at your core and practicing authenticity, vulnerability, and empathy. I know it's an Achilles heel, Monica. I so agree. And so we really want to focus inward and just check and make sure we are doing some things within the nonprofit as a leader that would help us better take care of ourselves. That's what our time together is going to be about. And so what I'm going to do is I'm really just going to share with you first 7 overall pillars that we utilize. I mentor women leaders in a community called Leading with Soul, and hence the name of our session together. But I do that under the guise of 7 pillars. I'll show you those, but what I really want is to give you 6 practical operational principles that you can put in place as soon as you finish here that would allow you to practice, to be more aware of how you are leading so that you are caring for yourself and your soul. All right, so that you are caring for you at your core, at your best. The 7 that I mentioned, the pillars, they are listed here. I won't read them all to you. What I want you to know about them is that there are power statements attached to them that I dig into and teach in the Leading with Soul community, because it's so important to me that we are able to say these statements about each of these 7 without reservation. I just want you to hear some of them, because this is about you, right? It's ultimately going to affect how effective you are as a leader in your nonprofit, but these are about you. I am clear on my personal values. Can you imagine having to serve others who have different value systems? You're having to partner with other organizations or other people who have different value systems. And if you're not clear on yours, that can be added stress. And you all have access to this entire PowerPoint slide in the documents in this session. So I've made it available to you. I set and assess the culture of my group. I'm willing to take risks. I prioritize compassion. I connect when I communicate. I am uniquely creative. I produce quality content. These are things that we have to be confident within ourselves about, and that takes personal development, personal time, personal nurturing. And so I really just want to talk through what are some of the practical things that get us to being able to make these statements. And that we are putting some things in place for personal development so that we can lead without losing our core, without losing who we are at our core while we serve others in such a challenging environment. And here is practice number 1. I'm going to give you 6 of them, and then I'm going to ask you how you're doing with it, okay? And I'm going to flow to honor our time and ask you to put yours in the chat, and then I'm just going to open up the floodgates for us to talk about them. Number 1, know the difference between confidence and conceit. I think in the nonprofit sector, many of you mentioned churches, I think some of us are not willing to talk about the work that we do, and we're not willing to promote and market what we do and how we do it, because we align that with arrogance or with conceit. And we think that there's something honorable about we mistake humility with false humility, and this level of, I'm not going to talk about the work that I do because how dare I talk about me. But if you don't talk about the work that you do, how is anyone going to know about the work that you do? And so I want to help many of us who are in these circles of, whether it's religious circles, which are nonprofits, or civic social circles, the difference between arrogance and confidence. Arrogance is thinking you are above someone else, and confidence is simply knowing that no one is above you. It's knowing that the work that you do is just as important as the work that anyone else does. It is knowing that your work and purpose in the world is needed and important. That does not make you arrogant. It does not make you conceited. It makes you confident about purpose. And so to me, we need to make sure that we have people around us that encourage us to speak up, that speak up for us on our behalf, and that challenge us to speak up about the work that we do. And that might mean a really strong board. I'm so appreciative of even Real Women board members that are present even here now. And for others, your board members should be your advocates. Your volunteers should be your advocates. But family members, those friends, trusted folks in your circles should be there to encourage you in the work that you do. And it really is important what kind of circle you have, because some of us are really challenged by some of the people around us, that they are not supportive. And maybe we are taught in some spaces not to talk about the work that we do. I just want to put that before us, that it's important to talk about it. So when you think about this practice, this is one of 6 we're going to talk about. Starting in the chat, how would you rate yourself on this one? How would you rate you on this one? Do you have an issue putting yourself, your work out there? Do you equate confidence with conceit or arrogance? Do you have an issue with this? Let's put a 1 on it if you know the difference really well. Number 2, if you need more practice on knowing the difference and practicing it. And number 3, if you don't practice this one yet, you really have not grasped the confidence, the courage to put yourself out there, and you really need to work on this one. And let's talk about that in the chat. And after the next one, I'll open up the floor so you can tell me which one you want to give some talk to, okay? I see the numbers coming. Good job. So a 1, we are really engaged in, I know I need to practice talking about the work that I do and valuing it for myself enough to talk about it. And number 3 is, I really need to do this more. You all can see you're in community together, what these numbers look like. And I love what Ayana said. I like this. My thing won't come down like I need it to. There we go. I also do meditation for personal growth to stop and listen. Oh, good. So important. Yeah, we're going to talk about self-care in a big way. Very good. Keep the numbers coming. I love how they keep it getting added. I'm going to go over 1 more before I open up the floor. Here we go. Acknowledge that the leader does not have all the answers. How many of you are trying to do it all? I mean, it all. I love these quotes. Self-aware leaders know they don't have all the answers, but they're open to being asked the questions and authentic enough to say, I don't know. And then I love this just as much. Great leaders don't know all the answers. They know all the questions and ask them. So you don't have to have all the answers. The how of this really simply is surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. Add people to your team. Let's not become the leader who is intimidated by other people around us, so much so that we have to be the end all be all. It is exhausting to be the end all be all. It doesn't feel good after a while. And so it is so important to both be confident about the work that we do and then invite others to the table. Does anyone, so now of course, I want you to rate yourself. How are you doing with this one? Do you share the load? I practice this one consistently. 2, I need to practice this one more. 3, I don't practice this one yet. Let's share. And 2 is a really safe space because we all have work to do, right? But also be honest, if you either do it really well or you really are working hard, because this is one you need to acknowledge. Good job. Yeah, it's harder, right? Let's talk about one or both of these. Anybody want to open up and unmute and share anything out loud? And I'll keep reading the chat.
You know, one of the things that can be challenging for all of us is, you take a lot of the load on yourself because you see the load that's on your team, how stressed they are, and you are trying not to add to their burdens. And sometimes that's the biggest problem that we all run into, is not that we think that we have all the answers or that we're the best at it. We know some of our team members are incredible, but especially during this pandemic, it's been magnified. Everybody is under such a stress of taking care of things and not always being in the same communication. We can be siloed a little bit. And as you see the stress loads increasing, sometimes you'll say, let me just take that on myself because I can bear it. I don't want anybody else to feel like they're tottering on the brink. And that sometimes is the most challenging thing.
Yeah, I so agree. We look at our folks and we say, oh, I don't want them to have the load. And so it's really hard to balance that. Michelle says we're all volunteers in my organization. Sometimes I feel the need to take on more because others don't get it done. And it's natural for the leader to feel the heavier load, to feel the burden, and to even, end up doing more, especially at the beginning stages when there is not a cadre of volunteers. But I think if we're constantly aware of this, we empower other people. They may not do it the way that we do, but we continually look to empower other people because it's just as much considerate developing them and giving them the opportunity to learn what leadership looks like while at the same time lightening your load a bit. Anyone else want to share about either one of these before we go on to the next 2? Wonderful stuff.
I'm new as a leader. And so I was mentored by the former president of our organization. And I noticed she took on a lot. And one thing I am trying to do is delegate and share the load with my board. It's hard. It's hard because they are of the more mature group. So they're a more challenged with a lot of the newer technologies and such. But I'm trying to put those feelers out there and just kind of see where it takes me with the hope that I can delegate more.
Yeah, so good, Linda. And I love that because the idea of being able to see, how it might wear someone else out before you, learning lessons from it, and really just trying to put systems and processes in place that will help all of you maintain your sanity, right? It's going to be hard work either way, but the more we share the load, the better we become. Nancy says about the first one, I know promoting the work of my nonprofit is not promoting myself, but promoting my team. I love that mentality. When you think about it that way, that you are actually promoting the work and not yourself, it's so much easier to do. And Ayana said, smart leaders know they're only as strong as their team. I love this, y'all. Keep the comments coming. It's so easy for us as visionaries to feel guilty that we're giving people a workload, as Sandy said, because it's our vision. And I, I have to be reminded of this. Folks have bought into the vision, right? So they want to be a part of it. And it is, Leslie, I believe, hard to sometimes let go and risk some things not going as well. It would be done my way if I do it, right? That's the challenge. And so that lesson is really hard to learn, but I still put it before us as something that we should practice more of, because it does benefit us as well as the folks that we serve. All right, I'm going to move to the next two. And please continue communicating with each other in the chat. I love the community that's happening in there. I'll come back to the chat in just a moment. The third one is to understand the importance of empowering others to lead. And of course, I bled into this one as I was sharing about the first one, the last one we just went over, because the function of leadership is to empower. It's to produce more leaders, not more followers. Good leaders develop ideas, great leaders develop people, and the best leaders develop new leaders. So if we get ourselves in that mindset that we are developing leaders, some of us, we do, it resonates with me what Sandy said. We feel like I have an idea and I need someone to help me execute it. It was my idea, it wasn't yours, but can you please? That's how we feel, right? Especially when they're volunteers. Let's turn that and flip that to, we are literally empowering people with skills and opportunities to grow. I think of what older folks would tell me. If someone gives you a compliment, or if someone tries to give you money, or if someone tries to give you a gift, just say thank you. And so if we think we are literally, when we are giving folks what we consider workload or burden or tasks, we are giving them the gift of learning and growing and leadership development. And so the how of this is to delegate and celebrate. So we don't just give loads, we don't just turn the work over, but we say thank you a million times over. And we find a million different ways to say thank you. I do a workshop for our CSM employees about appreciating, rewarding, and recognizing their team members, because it's so important to find. And sometimes there are tons of free ways to do it. You don't always have to dig into your coffers to do it, but delegate. Whenever you think delegate, it rhymes. Think celebrate, because your thank yous mean so much to people who are working out your vision. And just think about it as I do, we do, and then you do. So when you're trying to figure out how to give it over, I'll do it, and then we do it together. And at some point, I've got to let go of the reins and allow you to do it on your own and simply give you feedback and say thank you. All right, here we go. You got to rate yourself. How would you rate you on this one? I need to delegate and celebrate more often. That would be your 3, or I don't do it because I don't have a team. Maybe you can be honest about that. I don't have a team yet, but I need to put one in place. I need to look for volunteers. Or 2, I need to practice this one more. I need to celebrate and delegate more. And maybe I celebrate yourself if you do it consistently. If you are a great delegator and celebrator, we'll want to hear from you about how you do it. So please add that one to the mix. I see the numbers coming. Good job. We have some delegators and those who could do more, but yep, who are delegating and celebrating, still working on this one. I love that. All right, let me do one more. I want to leave at least 10 minutes for us to just chat if I can. All right, so seeking progress and growth, not perfection. Oh, this is so important. Think about how we started this. You are leading a nonprofit and you don't want to lose yourself. You don't want to lose your core. You don't want to lose your best self in the midst of all the work that you do. Can you give yourself grace today, tomorrow, next week? Give yourself grace. One of my favorite authors and speakers is Brene Brown. Let me know if she's one of your faves as well. One of her books is The Gifts of Imperfection. How about that? It's a gift to be imperfect. Who would have thought it? Who would have thunk it? Let's go with who you think you're supposed to be. Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. I love that subtitle. Here's a quote from her. I don't know if I could have said it better. Owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy, the experiences that make us the most vulnerable. Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light. And I translate that to say, because that's a personal lesson for me, but in the work of our nonprofits, we have to know that there are going to be mistakes made. There are going to be imperfections. They're going to be, and all we have to do is see them as opportunities to grow. And I say all we have to do because we cringe. We feel all of the guilt and the shame that comes along with something not appearing perfect. Can I tell you that our CSM team, I just want to stop and say this for a moment. Our CSM team for the Nonprofit Institute conference is probably feeling a whole load, an extra load of something because of the technical difficulties that happened for session 1. Do you know this is our first time doing this fully virtual, and it's going to be a wonderful growth opportunity. So not only do we have, all of the feelings that come with being the leaders and the team members that are responsible, and we get to, execute and work through these imperfections, but we get to learn and grow from them. And so that's the most important lesson here, is the growth journey. All right, so how we work this out becomes really important, right? Embrace imperfection and discuss imperfection openly. It doesn't become normalized until we talk about it and until we act as though, it's a growth opportunity. I want to talk about both of those, but I want you to rate yourself on this one. Anybody have any thoughts about this one? I'm looking in the chat now. Grace is so important. Anybody want to unmute?
Hey, I'll unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, Melanie, please.
So I think I'm good at this one because, I am good at this one because my background is technical. I used to work for a corporate company called the Wills Group, and I worked in IT. So technical problems happen, right? Those are imperfections. And I've been able to use that skill in my nonprofit now. So this is the one that I'm like, oh yes, I can put 1 finally, because all the other ones, I got to work on. But my skills from my previous role has helped me with this, which is good.
Yeah, really good. I'm so glad you give yourself credit for that, right? That this is one that I know things are going to happen. In fact, when you expect things to happen, you're just pleasantly surprised when it goes well, right? So that's such a good skill to have. Anyone else want to share about one of those?
I'll share.
Yes, please. And is it Ayana or Iyana? I want to honor your name.
It's Ayana.
Ayana, got it.
I always tell people that's the easy part. Last name is King, but it's I like I caramba. Ayana.
Ah, gotcha. All right, Ayana. Thank you.
I could tell you this book was life-changing for me. I've been in leadership roles for decades and really embraced the book to the point I think I probably bought about 20 to 30 copies, shared with my staff, gave my staff copies of the book. We actually used some of it back in the day to pretty much talk about in staff meetings and, put some of that stuff out there and really address some of it and it helps everyone because they're able to utilize their skills better and not blame. Get away from blaming and really look at how do we grow from any situation. And it's taught me a whole lot in leadership pieces. So I was like, oh, my favorite book. Thank you. Thank you. I love it.
I'm so glad. I'm hoping that there's one thing that pops out at every one of you somewhere in the presentation. And I love that this is one of your favorite books. That really works for me right now. So thank you for that.
Can I just share one thing from
Please.
This one, which I had to learn. I had a consultant come in, and one of the things they taught me was we would do a thing, what's on your plate? and everyone would post up what's on their plate, like on Post-its. And, sometimes we would exchange different pieces because some people can get things done quicker. And it really helped everyone because we know in nonprofits, you're usually working with a small staff, if any. And when you are, use the strength of your staff to accomplish different pieces. So putting up and it was like a staff little thing, what's on your plate? And everybody would put up their Post-its and they may exchange certain things. So everyone would buy in and work collectively, and it builds a stronger team as well.
So good. Such a good nugget. I love your consultant. That was really good. Anyone else? I see some wonderful numbers in the chat. I love that you all are giving yourself credit for this. And I love that you're being honest in the confessional booth about where you can work on it, because again, imperfection is to be embraced. So wherever we are, wherever we recognize growth opportunities, I think it's a great opportunity for us to grow and move forward and get better.
I wanted to
Please go for it, Monica.
The imperfection one, growth instead of imperfection. I really experienced this one when our church had really very little media presence at all. And so when COVID hit, we had to quickly spin up, Facebook presence, other thing. So we learned right away that things are going to happen. And so it was a matter of teaching people, this is not going to be perfect, but but we're going to work on it and we're going to improve, we're going to do. And, so it was a real quick learning, just to take it as it comes type of thing and just, keep trying and working it out. And we had gotten a message from someone that we knew way back when that lives in another state, just so happened to view the broadcast. She's like, how do you guys do that? You have like the best podcast that I've seen. We're like, oh, great. That's wonderful. We were just shooting for doing. We weren't shooting for great. So
yeah. It's like if you anticipate, that things are going to happen and you roll with it. It's always better. The viewer, the audience, the receiver of the information is always more impressed than you are with your stuff. You will always notice all of the kinks, all of the mistakes, and they will receive it within the heart that you presented it. And so I love the question, because I know that was one description in the chat about, all of these things that we're sharing right now, whether you are a nonprofit or a for-profit, these same things are important as a leader. These are things that you want to implement no matter what the venue is, because at the end of the day, you still have to work, you still have to protect you, have to prioritize you and what that looks like for you. And this one is especially, I'm going to do two more, and then the floor is open for any of your strategies and thoughts that you want to share. But this goes to Linda's question, because we would think that a succession plan would be talked about just in business. But yay, even your nonprofit needs a succession plan. I love what Linda asked about, what she shared about being able to shadow and watch and be mentored by the previous president. Because one of the things that we often miss, according to Ann, in succession planning is that it should be done gradual and thoughtful, with lots of information and knowledge and perspective shared all along the way, so that when it has to happen, it's a non-event when it happens. And so many of our organizations and businesses, right, if we float to for-profit, but so many of our organizations are so built on the leader that if something were to happen, even our insurance, right, is built on who the leader is. And so if something were to happen to the leader, what would happen to our work? What would happen to our nonprofit? If you feel confident that your work would live on beyond you, beyond an injury, beyond you deciding to move on, beyond, God forbid, something worse happening to you, then that's what we're talking about here. That means that you're able to not just step away permanently, but you're able to take a vacation. You're able to take a day off, because if it could last without you, in perpetuity, then yes, it could last without you for a day, right? So succession planning is so important. And it's important that it happens along the way. Find and pour into your replacement, no matter where you are in your organization. If you are the head of the organization, if you're the COO, if you're the financial person, if you are a volunteer, always talk about your organization so that were you to leave or depart for any reason, your place would be fulfilled. It's easy. It's easier for a leader to know that the folks who work with them are empowering others. And for that to happen, they have to model it and have a replacement in place. All of this goes back to us prioritizing that pouring into others so that we can then empower them, but also have some space and time for ourselves. So the question is, how would you rate yourself on this one? And be honest. Do you have a succession plan? Do you plan to do it if you're brand spanking new? If you don't have one yet, this is a safe space. It's a growth opportunity. So let's be honest. Yep, good. Okay, it's something we can do more. Maybe we have some folks in place and we just need to pour into them more. We need to give them more opportunities to for us to step away from the I do and we do to just you doing it, so you can see how it feels to do it without me. Good job. I see a bunch of great numbers coming in. And no one person should have control over any one aspect. I love the notion of cross-training. Absolutely. So if someone steps away, someone can continue the work. This is good. And there is, I love this question, and I find it when there's staff. Okay, so I'm going to read this question because I like it. What advice, I like all your questions. What advice would you give to a new nonprofit? I find it challenging when there is not much staff and you're still bringing awareness to your vision. And so when it's a new one, I still say we're constantly doing the work, but looking for someone to help us with the work. It might be a family member. My children come to some of the sister circles, to help us out. It might be someone that you have to, I'll pay you lunch today if you help me out with this. But I think we should, even as a new nonprofit, share our vision with someone. And some of you all might have some suggestions for how, when there's not much staff and it's just you, how do you bring awareness to your vision? Talking about it constantly, not putting yourself in a shy place. I think we mentioned that as well. Let's get some of those sharings in the chat going, because I'm about to open it up right after this one. The last one is the big self-care notion. If you haven't noticed, that's a theme here. But the idea is to explore your own personal interests outside of your leadership work. Brene Brown, again, one of my sheroes, says the opposite of play is not work. Can you all hear me? Is this thing on? The opposite of play is not work. The opposite of play is depression. Let that sink in. If we don't find ways to do, we will sink in the work, in the good work that we do. We will go down and literally the water will be here and we'll still be helping everybody else. I hope you feel helped. I hope you feel helped, and we're constantly drowning. And so for the quarter of us who answered that poll and said we're overwhelmed and we're drowning in it, we have to, we need to, we must step away for a moment. So I'm just going to tell you, for me, that has looked like taking regular breaks from work to play and to rest. And resting has not been for me laying in my bed on my computer doing work. Yes, it is less work, less strenuous, but there's a different kind of fatigue that happens in this virtual space. And being in front of a screen is not rest. Being in front of a screen is not play, unless you're a video gamer, maybe. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like real good rest. So knowing your interests, knowing what those things are, and then working toward them, I think is so important. How would you rate yourself? Let's be honest. Is play, is rest not a part of your schedule these days? Go ahead, Monica, thank you for being honest. Leslie, thank you for being honest. It's not, yeah. So let's just talk about it. I'm opening up the floor because we only have a few more minutes, but I'd love to know where you are with all of these, where you are with this one, what your suggestions are for those of us who are up here. And why some of these are so important to you. I'm just gonna let this one sit here for a second while we open up the floor, and I'm gonna move to a slide that would allow us to just discuss. Anyone want this one?
I'll take
Please.
it.
Yep, please.
Building your personal time. Like I usually take vacations like in September for like 2 weeks, and usually around Christmas when nonprofits slow down for like 3 to 4 weeks. But building your own personal time to rejuvenate yourself. One, it'll allow you to think clearly, not feel overwhelmed, but at the same time, shut it off. It's important to shut it off and really spend time enjoying your life. Having a work and life balance is the most important thing you can do. And it took me a long time to realize that, but I had to build it in. And I build in exercise, I build in time for me. There's times I shut my phone off and everything, but it's really important to understand that you're only as good and powerful whenever you're replenished and being able to shut off and step away. So that's how I do it. Schedule it.
So good. So good. Thank you for that. And thank you all for addressing each other's questions in the chat as well. This is awesome. Who else wants to share a takeaway, a nugget, how you do it, whatever you want to share?
I'll share. I learned some years ago, even before having the thought of creating a nonprofit, I learned years ago from my pastor to actually take that time. I attended a minister's conference for wives, and she made the statement that, listen, I have to do it. We run a church, we do this, we do that. And I didn't know how to, because my husband was always working. And every time I said, hey, let's take a vacation, he was like, well, I gotta work. I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And so that was my question, like, how do I do it? She was like, men are funny. And she said, the moment you spend the money, they'll find the time. So that's what I did. And don't get me wrong, it was the cheapest vacation ever. I was much, much younger. And even now, when it's hard to do, whether there's money or not, I found a way, whether it is just exploring what we got right here in our own city. A staycation can be just as fun. Hey, let's go ahead and go look at these museums. Let's go down here to the Smithsonian. There's stuff right here in our backyard that is FREE, that if you go anyplace else, you got to pay $12 to go see it. Who's paying $12 to go to the museum? I live in Washington, D.C. I'm not doing that. And so, and it opened my mind. And I'm talking about, this has probably been almost 20 years ago. Yeah. No, almost. It's been over 20 years ago. And it opened me up to realize just how important that time is. And whether you have a nonprofit or not, whether you're working for one, like you said earlier, this works for profit and for nonprofit. We can just get so caught up in the day to day that we don't think about us.
Yes, so good.
We don't think about going to the doctor. We don't think about just doing something small like, oh, I'm gonna go get my nails done or get a haircut. I mean,
so good. Let me interject there. This is so good, Michelle, because how many of us have not been to the doctor or the dentist or, and I know COVID is real. And so as things open up and as you feel safe, just getting outside, it was, here for all of us who are in Southern Maryland, it was 60 degrees outside yesterday. How many of us stayed at our computer all day, or how many of us got out for a walk? Just those kinds of moments are so important. I love the idea of discussion and time being so good that that we wish there was more time, rather than it dragging on and wondering what time is this going to be over. So I don't know if you're looking at your watch, but we are now at our time, probably 60 seconds over. Please pay attention to the chat. There have been so many amazing suggestions in the chat. Please make sure that you, as an individual leader of a nonprofit, future or current, that you take time out for yourself. We would love for you to complete the survey for this session, for the conference. As you go through, you'll have the opportunity at the end of each session to complete a survey, and then for the entire conference as well. And I just invite you to think about, you're welcome to connect with me either in our Leading with Soul membership. You have all of this information in the slide deck that I shared with you already. So you're welcome to connect with me after this. I am so appreciative of you sharing, because walking away from some of the other, I know you're going to talk about budgeting, and I know you're going to talk about building your board, but you have taken a moment to talk about you and how you care for yourself as a leader of a nonprofit. And I'm so grateful that you were able to do that with me. Thank you. It was so worth the wait for me as well. I look forward to connecting with many of you, and feel free to continue the conversation with me. I'll be here with you all day enjoying the other sessions. You all take care.